In a rustic lumber mill, blades whirl, stripping bark from a hefty log. A worker reaches in absent-mindedly. Fingers catch, hand mangles in a bloody whirl. He recoils, clutching the stump as blood sprays. Comrades rush, but the damage is done. One reckless graze turns routine labor into maimed despair. A staff member mops the floor in a medical room. Another approaches a machine fiddling with controls. A sudden explosion erupts, hurling them back. They crash to the ground, motionless. Colleagues panic, rushing to aid, voices frantic. A single misstep turns a quiet moment into tragedy. In a dimly lit workshop, a cocky machinist braces against an industrial lathe, gripping the chuck to halt its spin. The motor hums, then roars, torque overwhelming. It yanks him. The key snags his jeans, twisting his leg in a hyperextended snap. A kill switch halts the beast. He collapses, clutching the agony. In one dumb bet, hubris yields to unyielding steel. A worker strides past crates in a warehouse. A forklift, forks raised, swerves right. The load tips, heavy crates crash down, pinning the worker beneath. Screams pierce the air as the pile settles. One wrong turns a routine walk into tragedy. An elderly man grips the handles of his cultivator, tilling soil with steady pulls. The machine lurches forward, blades whirring wildly. He stumbles, and the cultivator surges over him, metal teeth biting deep. His cry is drowned by the roar. In a single, tragic moment, routine labor becomes deadly. At a security gate, a cargo truck carrying two elderly people followed another truck through an automated barrier. As the truck passed under, the barrier arm began to lower, having detected the first vehicle, but not the second. The descending barrier struck the elderly woman who was sitting in the open cargo bed. The impact knocked the woman off the back of the truck and onto the road. In a gym, a man was completing a strenuous workout with dumbbells. After finishing his set, he placed the dumbbells back onto the rack. Immediately afterward, the man passed out and collapsed, falling to the floor. He remained on the floor unresponsive next to the equipment. Always listen to your body to avoid overexertion during exercise and ensure you are. A man was walking near a lake with a carbon fishing rod. He raised the long rod, contacting an overhead high-voltage power line. A loud explosion occurred and the man was electrocuted, falling to the ground. Another person fishing nearby ran to help. Carbon fiber is a conductor. Always look up and stay clear of power lines when handling long objects like fishing rods. In a cloth factory, a worker was adjusting fabric on a running weaving machine when his hand got caught between the rollers. The machine pulled him in, spinning him violently as he hit the ground again and again. Shut down machines before adjustments. One moment of carelessness can be fatal. A worker stands on a tilling machine's blades to clear a jam. He hits the start button, still atop. Blades whirl, pulling him in. Flesh and bone shreds swallowed by mud. A fleeting lapse in judgment, and a routine fix becomes a fatal churn of machine and man. A green forklift rams into stacked white crates. They topple with a crash, burying a worker circled in red under jagged debris. Another rushes to help as chaos erupts. In one careless moment, a routine task turns to tragedy. A worker tried to cut an iron barrel without any protective gear. In an instant, the barrel exploded. The force threw him backward, knocking him to the ground. Never underestimate hidden dangers. Proper safety gear and caution can mean the difference between life and loss. In a hair salon, the owner plugged in a hairdryer for a customer. As soon as it was plugged in, the appliance sparked and ignited, catching fire. The fire immediately spread to nearby flammable products, quickly engulfing the salon. Always inspect electrical equipment for frayed cords or damage before use, and discard any faulty devices immediately. A worker strides across a container ship's slanted deck, boots slipping on the slick surface. He skids, crashing into a metal structure. A fiery explosion erupts, smoke and dust billowing as he vanishes from sight. In one fleeting slip, a routine step ignites a deadly blaze. The man was operating a crane to lift a heavy steel coil high into the air. Suddenly, a speeding forklift lost control and slammed into the hanging coil. The impact jerked the wire, toppling the entire crane tower. In a split second, one mistake set off a chain of disaster. At a train depot, a worker was cleaning the exterior windows of a high-speed train using a cleaning rod with a very long handle. As the worker attempted to shift the handle to his left side, he raised the tool into the air. The long handle made contact with a high-voltage overhead power line. The worker in a warehouse, a forklift began to reverse. Another worker was sitting on the floor near the back of the vehicle in the driver's blind spot. As the forklift moved backward, it ran over him. Always ensure reversing alarms are functional. Check all blind spots before moving, and never sit or working in areas of active vehicle traffic. Workers were helping each other inside a warehouse, surrounded by tall piles of bags. Without warning, one stack shifted and collapsed. The heavy bags tumbled down, burying everyone beneath. In unsafe spaces, one unstable load can turn teamwork into tragedy. In a factory, a male worker was operating near an active winding machine. A white wire from the machine was observed caught under the worker's foot. The continuous pull of the winding machine tightened the wire, pulling the worker towards it. The man attempted to remove the wire, but was unable to get free and was pulled into the machine. In a bustling Chinese steel yard, a gantry crane hoists a massive girder high. A slip. The beam plummets, slamming into a worker below. He crumples, pinned under iron weight, cries muffled. Colleagues freeze in shock. One fatal oversight turns a simple lift into crushing catastrophe. In a small foundry, a male worker was handling a piece of material containing molten iron. The material hardened prematurely, and the worker attempted to break it open manually. As he struck the hardened exterior, the high internal pressure was suddenly released. The molten iron inside the material gushed out, spraying onto the worker. Always follow established procedures for dealing with material blockages, and never attempt to break open items containing high pressure, high temperatures. A teen straps into a towering amusement ride, laughter echoing. The ride jerks upward, then a sickening snap. Cables fail, the seat plunges, he falls, screams cut short on impact. Dust rises, crowds gasp. In one fleeting thrill, joy turns to horror, a young life lost to a merciless drop. In a humming textile mill, a worker leans into spinning shafts. A snag. Fabric yanks him in, body coils wildly, limbs flailing in twisted loops. Machine grinds to a halt. He staggers up, dazed but breathing. One careless tug turns routine, threading into a vortex of near-fatal peril. In a bustling Dairy Queen, a worker with ponytail mixes a blizzard. She turns, hair snags in the whirring auger, yanking her head down with a thud as the machine tips. She yelps, trapped amid the chaos. Co-workers rush over, one snipping strands with scissors to free her. Unharmed, but shaken. One loose lock flips desert duty into tangled peril. At an industrial site, a male worker was monitoring a crusher. The worker then climbed onto the machine to inspect its rotating shaft while it was still in operation. As he got close, he was caught by the rotating shaft. He immediately became entangled in the machinery, getting stuck and rotating continuously with the shaft. Always ensure machinery is completely powered off. The man stood beside a large car tire being inflated when it suddenly exploded. He jumped back just in time, but the tire shot upward and nearly came crashing down on him. The shockwave knocked over nearby tools and echoed through the garage. He stared in disbelief, heart pounding. High-pressure equipment demands caution. The man was repairing a tire as it was being inflated when it suddenly exploded with a deafening bang. The blast threw him backward, slamming him to the ground and injuring his arm severely. Co-workers rushed to help as he cried out in pain. Always deflate before repair. Pressure. In a factory, a small elevator struggled to lift a heavy silver barrel. As it tilted under the weight, the elevator gave way and crashed down. The worker in a yellow shirt standing too close was struck and crushed by the falling barrel. A single misstep near heavy loads can cost a life. A male worker was alone in a textile factory, carefully checking the weaving machine's operation. As he reached in too close, the machine caught his hand and dragged his whole body into its spinning rollers. The cycle didn't stop. Never inspect running machines. One wrong move can cost everything. At a train station in Russia, a man with a backpack tried to take a shortcut across the tracks. Suddenly, a high-speed train rushed toward him. The horn blared as the train closed in within seconds. In a split second, he dropped flat beneath it and survived by inches. Never risk crossing the tracks. One reckless shortcut can cost your life. In a chemical plant, a worker opens a tank lid, unaware of unvented rainy nickel inside. A co-worker sparks a flame, igniting the gas. A massive explosion obliterates the worker, blasting him through the roof. Debris and body parts rain down, a tragic cost of bypassed safety protocols. The man was on the phone as he walked into the flattening machine's work area. Distracted, he reached in to straighten the material without noticing the moving rollers. In an instant, the side roller pushed him onto the table and pressed him down. It shows how a moment of inattention can turn dangerously. A worker was in the process of securing an upright steel billet to a crane's lifting rope. Before the billet could be properly fastened, it became unstable, tipped over, and fell. The worker was struck by the falling billet, which crushed his leg. This incident highlights the importance of ensuring all loads are stable on the ground before attempting to rig them for lifting. In a noisy factory, a worker feeds thick ropes into grinding rollers, perched precariously on the pile. Suddenly, his ankle loops in, the machine drags him down. He thrashes, screaming as it pulls him under, pants ripping. A co-worker lunges, smacks the red emergency button. Rollers freeze. He crawls out. At a phone repair shop, a technician was working on a non-genuine phone brought in by a customer. During the repair, the device suddenly exploded and caught fire. The force of the explosion threw the technician backward. Always use caution when handling non-genuine electronic devices, as they're components. In a humming Chinese factory, a worker bends near whirring belts. Hair snags, machine yanks viciously, scalp rips free in a bloody peel. She crumples, screaming, blood pooling. A colleague cradles her, soothing the shock. One stray lock turns routine labor into scalped horror. High above the city, workers cling to scaffolds on a rising high-rise, winds howling through steel beams. Then, a deep groan, a violent shudder. Metal twists, floors collapse, dust erupts skyward. Harnesses snap tight, men dangle amid ruin. In one brutal instant, ambition turns to tragedy. In a Chinese factory, a worker adjusts a metal piece under a press. Her elbow accidentally hits the start button. No safety curtain stops it. The press slams down, flattening her arm to mush. She calmly frees herself, shock masking the pain as poor safety design claims another victim. In a factory, A worker was operating in an area where a line lifter was moving heavy materials overhead. Suddenly, the materials being transported detached from the lifter. The heavy load fell from a height, striking the worker who was positioned below. The worker was seriously injured. A car wash attendant grips a hose near a spinning brush. It snags, yanking him in. The giant roller spins him wildly, shoes flying off, body slamming beams. He tucks in, dazed, as it stops. In one careless tug, a routine task twists into terror, ribs broken in a merciless whirl. In a dingy garage, a mechanic hunches under a massive truck, wrench twisting at rusted bolts. The vehicle teeters on shaky jacks. Suddenly, a slip, a groan of metal. The rig lurches, jacks buckle, tons of steel plummet. He twists in futile panic, crushed in seconds beneath the wreckage. Precision yields to peril in one fatal. A man strides along a curved path, unaware of a yellow truck reversing. The vehicle lurches, blind to him. A sickening thud, tires crush flesh. He collapses, trapped beneath. The truck halts, too late. In one blind moment, a casual walk becomes a fatal oversight, life erased under steel. A girl was standing at the rear of a truck at a loading dock, inspecting the goods. Suddenly, the truck moved forward. Because she was positioned in the gap between the truck and the warehouse dock, she lost her balance and fell to the ground below. Always make sure to communicate with the driver and confirm the truck is secured before entering a trailer. In a quiet yard, a welder in a helmet sparks a transformer. A flash! Combustible gas ignites, blasting him skyward. He plummets, limp, as flames roar and smoke billows. Colleagues freeze, stunned. One stray spark on a routine job ignites a fatal explosion. A worker in dark clothes strides through a bustling sand site. A yellow excavator reverses, blind to him. It slams into him, dragging him under. Soil buries him as the machine rolls on, unnoticed. Chaos hums, no one stops. One fatal oversight turns routine haul into pulverized doom. The large crane was slowly hoisting a bulky piece of equipment when the lifting rope suddenly snapped. The two supervisors below froze, unable to move in time. The heavy load struck the ground, grazing them. A single break in control can turn oversight into a narrow escape. In a bustling Dairy Queen, a worker with ponytail mixes a blizzard. She turns. Hair snags in the whirring auger, yanking her head down with a thud as the machine tips. She yelps, trapped amid the chaos. Co-workers rush over, one snipping strands with scissors to free her. Unharmed, but shaken. One loose lock flips desert duty into tangled peril. Inside a humming industrial plant, workers tend to clanking machines. A low rumble grows, then a blinding explosion. Fireballs erupt, metal shards fly, and smoke swallows screams. Bodies collapse amid the inferno. In one volatile flash, routine shifts to ruin, lives consumed by sudden catastrophe. In a factory, a male worker stood on the bed of a pickup truck, attaching a magnetic crane to a heavy metal piece. Before he could finish securing it, the crane moved suddenly, dragging the metal and knocking him off the truck. He hit the ground as the metal slammed down beside him, missing by inches. Always ensure equipment is stable before lifting. One sudden move can cost a life. In a searing aluminum smelter, an overhead crane heaves a glowing ladle. A jolt, molten metal spills, splashing across the floor. Concrete pops, vapor hisses, workers bolt as silver floods the bay. In one clumsy tilt, the large crane suddenly lost balance, tilting before crashing down. The driver and a man standing on the wheel tried to jump to safety, but the machine fell too fast. One of them was thrown aside, hitting the ground hard. The air filled with dust and the groan of twisted metal. Always stabilize heavy machinery before operation. Once it tilts, at a crowded gas station, two cars were refueling side by side. Without warning, the black car exploded. Flames burst out, smoke and tire fragments scattered through the air. People screamed and ran for safety. In a flash, ordinary moments can erupt into chaos and tragedy. At a construction site, a truck was dumping dirt near a slope when the ground suddenly gave way. The soil collapsed, pulling the truck and a nearby supervisor down with it. Always inspect slopes carefully. Unstable ground can turn routine work into tragedy. Beside the warehouse, a truck stood loaded with goods. A female worker carefully lifted a heavy box from the truck bed. As it hit the ground, it burst open. Smoke and dust billowed into the air. Even simple tasks can hide unseen risks. Always handle and inspect materials with care. On a steep industrial road, a truck groans beneath towering steel coils. One breaks loose, rolling with thunderous force. A worker lunges forward, hands outstretched to stop it. The massive coil slams down, a blur of dust and metal. In one heroic folly, resolve crushes to ruin. In a roaring steel mill, workers eye glowing bars snaking through rollers. Suddenly, a derail. Red-hot metal whips out like a fiery serpent. It slams a man in the chest, knocking him flat, searing flesh. A hero lunges in, yanks him clear as the coil chases. A man fully suited in protective gear tried to drill into a large oxygen tank. The drill bit sparked, and in an instant, the tank exploded with a deafening blast, hurling debris and smoke into the air. It only takes one reckless action to turn a routine task into a devastating tragedy. In a noisy factory, two workers in orange gear struggle with a pressurized pipe. A sharp hiss, then a deafening blast. Dust fills the air as one worker disappears, buried or struck. The other staggers back in shock. Colleagues freeze. In a split second, routine labor turns to catastrophe. Workers tend machines in a factory. A spark ignites molten metal, triggering a fiery blast. Towering flames and smoke erupt. Debris flies. Workers sprint, dodging shrapnel. The air chokes with heat. One errant spark turns a steady shift into tragedy. The worker wearing a blue hard hat was inspecting a gas cylinder when the pipe he was checking suddenly exploded. The blast threw him into the air as compressed gas burst out, bringing pieces of the factory ceiling crashing down. Always under vivid blue to purple lights, a performer glides through the air, suspended by a slender wire. The crowd watches, breath held, as she twirls gracefully, until a sharp snap cuts the silence. She plunges, colliding with the stage in a sickening thud. A moment's failure, a life extinguished. In a cramped Vietnamese shop, a sugarcane press whirs hungrily. A woman edges by, jacket snags on spinning rollers. Yanked in, she spins wildly, body twisting in violent loops. A quick-thinking man flips the switch, halting the machine. She emerges shaken, spared worse. One careless brush turns routine navigation into spinning chaos. The man was operating an excavator near a large hole, positioning it too close to the edge. Suddenly, the embankment gave way, dragging both the machine and the operator into the pit. The excavator tilted sharply, its arm striking the ground with a loud crash. The man scrambled free, shaken but alive. Keep a safe distance from a motorbike rode too close to a large bulldozer moving ahead. Caught in the machine's blind spot, the bulldozer driver couldn't see or stop in time and ran over the bike. The rider jumped aside just in time, rolling onto the roadside. The bike was crushed under the heavy tread. Stay clear of heavy vehicles. Blind spots can turn seconds into tragedy. On a flatbed truck loaded with steel pipes, one worker was busy securing a bundle for a crane lift. At the same time, another bundle of pipes located elsewhere on the truck bed became unstable and began to roll. The pipes rolled off the side of the truck and fell to the ground, crushing another worker. A man brought a large battery into his house to charge it. While the battery was plugged in, it violently exploded and caught fire, spreading flames within the room. Always charge high-capacity batteries in a safe, open area. Use only the manufacturer-approved charger. The woman was working at the steel bar bending machine when her hands caught on the moving parts, pulling her in. She screamed as the machine dragged her closer, and her co-workers rushed to shut it down and pull her free. One small slip near heavy machinery can turn into disaster in seconds. On a factory floor, a male worker was adjusting the control panel for a screw conveyor. The conveyor activated, and the worker then attempted to cross to the other side by climbing on a bar positioned above the moving machinery. While climbing over the active conveyor, the worker missed his step. His leg fell into the machinery, trapping him instantly, and in a bustling warehouse, a worker operates a pulley to shift massive steel coils focused on his task. Suddenly, one coil tilts, slipping free and crashing down onto him. The 3-ton roll pins his legs, crushing him beneath its weight. He struggles to breathe, shouting for help as colleagues rush to lift the metal. One skipped safety check. One unsecured load nearly cost everything. In a ceramic tile factory, a worker was standing next to a large stack of ceramic tiles to perform their work. Suddenly, the entire stack became unstable, started to tilt, and fell over onto the worker. Always ensure heavy materials are stacked securely on level ground, interlocked or braced properly, and never stacked above a safe height limit to prevent collapse. During a lifting operation, a crane was lowering a container. The load became unstable and began to shake and swing wildly as it descended. A worker on the ground below was forced to dodge the container to avoid being hit. As the container continued to sway, it swung back and nearly struck the worker a second time. This in a warehouse. A man was loading a cart of goods into a freight elevator. After pulling the cart fully inside, he stepped back out onto the warehouse floor to manually pull the elevator door closed. At that moment, the elevator car suddenly dropped and fell down the shaft. This incident highlights the critical need for regular elevator maintenance and ensuring all safety brake systems are functional. In a rustic lumber mill, blades whirl, stripping bark from a hefty log. A worker reaches in absent-mindedly. Fingers catch, hand mangles in a bloody whirl. He recoils, clutching the stump as blood sprays. Comrades rush, but the damage is done. One reckless graze turns routine labor into maimed despair. In a humming Chinese factory, a worker bends near whirring belts. Hair snags. In a bustling factory, a worker in gray approaches a spinning green machine feeding white material. Suddenly, his sleeve snags on the relentless roller, yanking him in with brutal force. His body twists violently, limbs flailing as he's spun repeatedly, blood spraying across the floor amid agonized cries. At a construction site, a high-rise building was being demolished without safety lines or barriers. People stood nearby watching, and vehicles passed as usual. Suddenly, the structure gave way, collapsing in a roar of dust and debris. Thick smoke filled the air as workers ran for their lives. Always secure the truck's cargo door was open for the man to inspect when it suddenly swung shut and struck him hard on the head. He collapsed instantly, and the nearby workers rushed toward him. It's a stark reminder that even familiar equipment can turn dangerous without warning. A person reached for a bag from a stack piled behind a wall. The bag slipped, striking the wall with force. In an instant, the wall collapsed, crashing onto a woman resting on the bed beside it. One careless action can bring down more than just a wall. It can destroy lives. In a clanging factory, a worker reaches into a whirring press. A slip, arms snag, machine tears, flesh from bone in a bloody rip. Limbs dangle limp, blood gushes as he staggers. Colleagues rush, tying tourniquets with shirts, stemming the flow. One fatal reach turns routine press into armless horror. In a hospital, doctors were pushing a patient on a bed into an elevator. While the bed was still partially in the doorway, the elevator suddenly began to move down, even though the automatic doors had not closed. The doctor reacted immediately, trying to free the patient and the bed. Always ensure that elevator safety interlocks, which prevent movement while doors are open. A crane was lifting an excavator onto a truck when the heavy load shifted. The weight dragged the crane forward, its balance lost. In seconds, both machines toppled and plunged into the nearby abyss. One misjudged lift can send even giants crashing down. In a chemical processing area, two workers were performing tasks next to a large metal drum. Suddenly, the contents of the drum burst into flames, engulfing one of the workers in fire. Always handle chemical drums with extreme caution, ensure proper storage, and wear appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE, when working near flammable materials. Several men stood around, watching as the machine lifted a decorative pole. Suddenly, the pole tilted instead of rising upright. In an instant, it swung sideways and struck a man standing close by. Even a small mistake during lifting can lead to sudden tragedy. At a factory workstation, a woman was operating a winding machine, feeding a piece of plastic wrap into it. As she flattened the plastic, her hand became caught in the machine's rotating parts. The machine continued to run, pulling the woman further into the mechanism. Always keep hands a safe distance from moving machine parts and ensure all safety guards are in place. A man was repairing an iron frame with a handheld cutter when the machine suddenly kicked back. The spinning blade caught his shirt, twisting it tight and nearly cutting into him. He acted fast, unplugging the cord and freeing himself. Quick reflexes saved him, but safety should come first. In a hose factory, a man was cleaning up a pile of rubber hoses when his foot got tangled in the material. The hose was being fed into a winding machine, which pulled the worker in by his foot. His co-workers quickly hit the emergency stop and pulled him out. Always maintain good housekeeping to prevent trip hazards and keep a safe distance from all active winding or pulling machinery. A worker was standing near a forklift adjusting an object on the forks. As he reached for the control panel to lower the lift, the arm came down unexpectedly. The mechanism struck the man on the head, causing him to fall to the ground in pain. Never stand or place any part of your body under a raised forklift load or mechanism. A worker sat on a stack of boards being lifted by a forklift. As the forklift moved, it struck a nearby pile of materials, jolting hard. The boards slipped, sending the worker crashing to the ground beneath them. Tools scattered as others rushed to help him. He groaned in pain, clutching his leg. Never ride on lifted. In a ceramic tile factory, a large stack of tiles was being lifted by a hoist to be moved. A worker, who was not wearing any safety gear, stood directly underneath the suspended load to adjust the lifting rope. Suddenly, the lifting rope slipped, losing its grip on the load. The entire stack of ceramic tiles fell from the hoist, landing on the worker. The two men appeared to have argued earlier. One of them was holding a long-handled ladle still filled water and dipped it into a tank of melting iron, causing the liquid to splash and spread toward the other man. He didn't stop there. He continued to throw the ladle at the other man while the argument went on, leaving the people around them embarrassed and forcing them to step in and help clean up the mess. A man in a jacket, acting with clear intent, secretly used a lighter to ignite a car while the man in black was pumping gas. The flame caught instantly, racing along the flowing fuel and bursting into the car. The man in black and the woman inside sprinted away as gas station staff rushed in with extinguishers. A reminder that a man in a jacket, acting with clear intent, secretly used a lighter to ignite a car while the man in black was pumping gas. The flame caught instantly, racing along the flowing fuel and bursting into the car. The man in black and the woman inside sprinted away as gas station staff rushed in with extinguishers. A reminder that the circus's big carousel spun rapidly as a performer reached for one of the moving rings to climb up. His grip slipped, and the force of the spin hurled him away. He landed hard on the ground, stunned, as the crowd gasped. The carousel kept turning, its lights flashing above him. Always secure yourself. One missed hold can turn a daring act into disaster. On a busy street, pedestrians stroll past glowing signs. A sudden orange flash erupts, hurling debris and bodies. People slam to the ground, some motionless, others scrambling in panic as the shockwave blurs the scene. In a split second, a quiet moment turns to tragedy. The crane was moving heavy bags while a worker stood near a deep hole. The load blocked the operator's view, and the crane kept moving forward, shoving the worker into the pit. He tried to shout, but the noise drowned him out. Others ran toward the edge as dust rose from below. Always maintain clear sight lines. Limited vision can lead. 3 workers handled massive wooden beams. One counted carefully while 2 struggled to hold the weight. But the timber was too heavy. It crashed down, trapping one beneath its force. Every task demands caution. Measure the risk and use the right tools, for strength without safety brings sorrow. In a textile factory, workers were straightening a large piece of cloth as it was being fed into a carding machine. One worker wrapped a portion of the cloth around his neck. Before he could remove it, the machine pulled the cloth in, lifting the worker off the ground by his neck. Other workers quickly activated the emergency stop and attempted to rescue him. Work is not a game. Do not engage in horseplay or joke around, especially near active machinery. At a factory workstation, a male worker was observing a mechanical press during its operation. The worker stepped in close to the machine to check its function just as the press began its cycle. Because he was standing too close to the point of operation, his leg was caught in the press mechanism. The worker cried out in pain as the machine trapped his leg. Always maintain a safe. A woman drove her tricycle across a degraded concrete road. When the wheels rolled over the cracked surface, the vehicle tilted, throwing her onto the ground just as a truck was passing. Unable to stop in time, the truck's wheels ran over her head. A harsh reminder that poor road conditions can turn dangerous in an instant. Drowsy and unsteady, a male worker leaned toward the running warping machine. In a flash, he slipped and got caught inside. Others rushed in, shut it down, and pulled him free. A single moment of fatigue can turn routine work into a near tragedy. The worker stood beside a red-hot metal block, ready for the stamping machine to shape it. Even with a support device nearby to hold it, the round block slipped when the press came down, shooting out with force and striking a worker, knocking him to the floor. A split second showed how unstable materials can turn into danger. At a warehouse, one man opened a large rolling door while another man, pulling a cart, positioned himself directly underneath the raised door. Without warning, the rolling door suddenly failed and slammed shut. The man standing underneath was caught by the door and crushed by its weight. Never stand, walk. At the base of an aging chairlift, families linger in the terminal. A sudden snap. Tension ropes fail. The carriage hurtles forward. Metal screeches. It flips upside down. Dust billows. Debris scatters. A worker yanks a man back, shields kids as a beam grazes his head. Chairs plunge into lake. A man stood on a compressed gas tank, arranging pipes on the truck bed. Suddenly, the tank began to swell and exploded with a loud blast. The truck rocked violently as fire erupted and spread to nearby materials. He was thrown clear, barely escaping the flames. Always ensure proper safety checks. Careful inspection can prevent deadly accidents. At a train station in Russia, a man with a backpack tried to take a shortcut across the tracks. Suddenly, a high-speed train rushed toward him. The horn blared as the train closed in within seconds. In a split second, he dropped flat beneath it and survived by inches. Never risk crossing the tracks. One reckless shortcut at a workstation. A male worker reached into a punching machine to adjust a product that was on the machine table. The machine activated unexpectedly, and the punch mechanism descended, catching the worker's hand. A colleague quickly activated the emergency stop, and the injured worker held his hand in pain. Always ensure. A man was standing nearby, supervising a forklift as it lifted a very large crate. The crate was not properly secured to the forks. As the forklift began to lift, the unsecured load became unstable, tilted, and fell off, crushing the supervisor. Always ensure loads are stable and secure. A worker in a pink shirt adjusts a towering paper roll, shoelace dangling. A snag. Machine yanks him in. Body twists violently, vanishing in a whirl of fabric. Colleagues sprint over, frantically heaving the roll to free him from the debris. In a split second, a routine task turns to tragedy. A car mechanic and another man stood beneath a car lifted for repair when the frame suddenly gave way. The vehicle dropped without warning, slamming to the floor. They jumped back just in time. Luck saved them, but safety should never depend on chance. In the middle of a road under repair, a speeding taxi suddenly swerved left as if the driver had lost control. The car slammed into a barrier and plunged straight into an open hole. Always reduce speed and stay alert near construction zones. One wrong turn can lead straight to disaster. A shirtless man moved to help another close the cargo door on a truck when the lift suddenly rose on its own, trapping both men between the platform and the door. Their co-worker ran to the driver's seat and lowered the lift just in time. Always cut power and secure equipment before working. Accidents strike without warning. The man held a small basin of water to wash his feet. As he poured the water near an electrical outlet, it splashed onto the socket, sending a sudden jolt through his body and knocking him down. A moment's carelessness around electricity can turn deadly without warning. In a humming factory, a worker leans into a whirring machine. A sleeve snags, gears seize him, yanking his arm with a sickening crunch. Blood sprays, metal grinds flesh, screams pierce the din. A co-worker fumbles for the stop switch, too late. In one careless, lean, routine work becomes a mangled ruin. A man was standing on a flatbed truck removing tiles as he worked his way toward the edge. He lost his footing, slipped, and fell from the truck bed to the ground. The unsecured tiles tumbled off the truck after him, crushing the worker beneath their weight. A colleague was seen rushing over to the scene. Always maintain secure footing when working at height, and ensure materials are unloaded in a stable manner to prevent them from falling. On a highway, a gasoline tanker was observed stationary on the roadside, fully engulfed in flames. Fire department crews were on site managing the scene. Despite these efforts, the tanker violently exploded, causing a loud detonation. The incident demonstrates the extreme volatility of fuel tankers and the necessity for extended cooling periods and wide safety perimeters. A man climbed onto a compressed gas tanker to perform a check. As he was preparing to get off, the tank violently exploded, billowing smoke. The blast threw him from the top of the tanker to the ground. This incident shows that accidents can happen unexpectedly, underscoring the critical need for thorough safety checks before work and adherence to all safety protocols. In a paper factory, a worker lunges at whirring rollers, flinging material to mend a break. Momentum betrays him. Caught in the crush, body twists and flattens amid grinding gears. Screams echo as he's pulled through, vanishing in folds. A machine worker stepped too close to a large feed mill machine, and his leg was instantly pulled into the spinning screw shaft. Within seconds, the machine swallowed him completely. His co-worker froze in shock at the sight. Always secure machinery and keep a safe distance to prevent deadly entanglement accidents. At a construction site, a truck was unloading materials when it lost balance. The cargo box tilted, pulling the whole truck over. The driver tried to escape, but before he could, the truck toppled, throwing him out and slamming him to the ground. Always judge the situation carefully. Quick, clear thinking can prevent serious accidents. In a paper factory, a man was clearing scraps near a paper rolling machine. Using his foot, he tried to brush away the excess paper stuck close to the rollers, but his foot slipped too close. The machine caught his pant leg and pulled him in with terrifying speed. One careless moment near a running machine can change everything. At a construction site, a truck was unloading sand when flames suddenly erupted from the center of the truck bed and spread to the front. The driver leapt out and ran from the fire. Always inspect your vehicle carefully. Maintenance can prevent disasters before they happen. A man was idly playing with the rubber belt of an old rice mill. Without warning, the machine roared to life. The belt caught his hand and yanked him forward with brutal force. Never treat machinery as a toy. One careless moment can turn curiosity into disaster. At a truck yard, a man climbed into a large truck to head out, unaware that another person was lying underneath it. The driver started the truck and pulled forward, running over the person underneath. This highlights the extreme danger of blind spots in large vehicles. Always perform a complete walk-around check of your vehicle before starting it. The worker was repairing a large electrical cabinet when it suddenly exploded, sparks and smoke bursting out as he was thrown backward by the blast. Always disconnect the power and ensure safety. One small lapse can lead to disaster. In a steel rolling mill, 3 workers were present during operations. Suddenly, a steel bar being formed derailed from the rolling line. The bar flew out at high speed, striking one of the workers and knocking him to the ground. The other 2 workers quickly moved to avoid being hit. They then attempted to pull the injured worker away from the area. This incident highlights the dangers of equipment failure in automated lines. Always maintain designated safe distances from machinery in operation and ensure robust guarding and emergency stop mechanisms are in place. The woman leaned against the wall, helping her husband close the truck bed door. Thinking she was done, he started driving forward. The door swung back and pinned her against the wall. In moments like these, a single misunderstanding can turn routine tasks into serious danger. A man climbed onto the roof of a gas tanker parked at a gas station to put the lid back on. But as he stood on top, he suddenly lost his balance, slipped, and fell straight to the ground, the impact echoing through the station. A stark reminder that every action at work, no matter how simple, must be done with full attention to safety. The worker stepped carefully along the ladder that connected the walkway to the large ship, gripping each rung with care. Suddenly, the ladder cracked in half with a sharp snap. He hit the side of the ship and tumbled down hard. When equipment fails, even the most cautious step can end in tragedy. High atop a power line tower, a man steadies himself against the humming wires, his form stark against the sky. Suddenly, a blinding arc flashes, electric fury exploding with a crack. His body stiffens, then drops, spiraling helplessly. The ground meets him hard, one surge, and all goes silent. A paramotor pilot, jacketed and helmeted, soars with a whirring motor. The parachute buckles, lines snarl. He spins wildly, plummeting to the desert floor, a sickening crunch. His leg twists, swollen and broken. Gear lies mangled. One gust of fate turns a free flight into tragedy. A man stood on a roof covered with corrugated iron sheets, working without any protective gear. Suddenly, the sheet beneath him slipped, dragging him down as it slid off the edge. He grabbed at the frame but couldn't hold on. He hit the ground hard, groaning in pain. Use safety equipment. One unsecured step can lead to a deadly fall. In the rain, a man in a raincoat climbed onto an old house to demolish it with a hammer. Suddenly, the chimney beside him collapsed, knocking him off the roof and pinning him to the ground. Luckily, the roof wasn't high, so he escaped serious injury. Always ensure safety when working at height. Unstable structures can collapse anytime. In a large packaging factory, a worker in a white shirt was pulling paper near a paper crushing machine when the sheets dragged his hand in. In seconds, he was caught in the moving rollers. His co-workers rushed over, shutting down the machine and pulling him free. Remember to keep a safe distance all the time. Machines can pull faster than you can react. In an industrial area, 3 male workers were maneuvering a large metal mold suspended from a lifting line. The mold suddenly became unbalanced and tipped, falling onto its side. One worker's leg was crushed and trapped by the mold, and his co-workers immediately attempted to pull him free. Always ensure suspended loads are properly balanced and that all personnel maintain a safe distance during movement. 2 technicians stood beside a compressed air tank, tightening a bolt. Suddenly, the bolt snapped, releasing a violent burst of air as dust and smoke shot everywhere. It's a stark reminder of how a single weak point can turn into sudden danger. On a busy construction site, a man stands atop a truck, directing the load above. A sudden crack splits the air. The structure collapses in seconds, swallowing steel and dust. The man vanishes amid the wreckage. In 20 seconds, order shatters. One wrong move, and stability turns to tragedy. At an industrial site, several engineers were standing on top of a large, compressed air tank while performing machine checks. Suddenly, the tank under their feet violently exploded. The force of the blast trapped many of the engineers against a surrounding fence, preventing their escape. Never stand on pressurized vessels or equipment not designed as a platform, and always ensure escape routes are clear when working near hazardous machinery. A young worker, distracted by his phone, opened the freight elevator door and stepped forward without looking. There was no lift inside. He plunged straight down the shaft. A moment of distraction can turn routine actions into tragedy. In a rumbling rock quarry, a worker climbs into a churning crusher hopper to dislodge a jam. Rocks cascade, slamming him down amid grinding jaws. Body twists, crushed in the maw as the machine roars on. Colleagues watch in horror. One foolish entry turns routine maintenance into pulverized demise. In a roaring cement factory, 7 workers climb into a giant ball mill for repairs. Unlocked, the machine hums to life. Steel balls churn, crushing them inside. Dust billows as the mill spins on, silencing screams. A single ignored lockout turns routine maintenance into a deadly grind. Workers chat near trucks in a warehouse. A truck slips backward on a slick surface. slamming into a bending worker. He collapses, crushed under the wheels as others sprint to help. In a fleeting second, a casual moment turns to tragedy. Inside a large factory, an industrial rolling mill was in operation. The machine suddenly malfunctioned, sprayed water, and then immediately caught fire. The flames spread rapidly from the machine, and within seconds, the fire engulfed the entire factory. Workers in the vicinity were seen quickly escaping the building. This incident underscores the importance of integrated fire detection and suppression systems on heavy industrial equipment. In an auto repair shop, a man was adjusting a truck's undercarriage when it suddenly came loose. The truck rolled backward off the support with a loud screech and slammed into him. A single loose hole can turn a repair into a fatal mistake. A man was checking a motorcycle in a repair shop when the vehicle suddenly caught fire, possibly from a fuel or electrical issue. He and others in the shop tried to lift a large bucket of water to douse the flames, but this only caused the burning fuel to spread. Accidents often happen unexpectedly. Never use water on a fuel or oil fire. Always use a Class B rated fire extinguisher. In a roaring cement factory, 7 workers climb into a giant ball mill for repairs. Unlocked, the machine hums to life. Steel balls churn, crushing them inside. Dust billows as the mill spins on, silencing screams. A single ignored lockout turns routine maintenance into a deadly grind. In a factory, a man was sweeping the floor, working his way toward a large upright steel billet. As he got close, the billet suddenly became unstable, tilted, and crashed to the ground. The worker had no time to run and was pinned underneath the heavy material. Always ensure heavy materials are properly chocked, braced, or secured to prevent them from tipping over, especially in work and transit areas. In a quiet yard, a welder in a helmet sparks a transformer. A flash! Combustible gas ignites, blasting him skyward. He plummets, limp, as flames roar and smoke billows. Colleagues freeze, stunned. One stray spark on a routine job ignites a fatal explosion. A crane, with a supervisor walking beside it, was operating dangerously close to the edge of a high cliff. The crane attempted to move the machine forward, but it misstepped, or the ground at the edge gave way. The crane lost its balance, tipped over, and fell from the cliff to the bottom. Always maintain a safe operating distance from edges and unstable ground. Ensure all personnel stay clear of the potential tip-over zone. In a dimly lit machine shop, a worker in a loose shirt brushes a spinning lathe. Fabric snags, yanked viciously, body twists in violent loops, limbs flailing. Shirt shreds to rags, flinging him back. He staggers up, shaken but intact. One foolish graze turns mundane task into whirling peril. A crane was lifting a massive concrete column when it began to tip and fall. The worker below ran to safety, but the weight dragged the crane forward. The operator jumped out to escape, yet the machine toppled over and crushed him. In heavy work, one wrong move can end in tragedy. A blue forklift hoists a container, unloading cardboard boxes. The bar slips free. The massive cab slams down, trapping the man's head in the wheel well with a sickening thud. He thrashes, pinned and howling. Colleagues shout, scrambling to help. A single tilt in a routine lift turns a moment into crushing tragedy. In a factory, 2 workers were monitoring an industrial device that looked like a vacuum dryer. The machine made a loud noise and then suddenly exploded. The dryer's heavy door was blown off, striking one of the workers and knocking him to the ground. Always ensure industrial equipment is properly maintained. Stand clear of doors and potential failure points on pressurized or high-temperature machinery during operation. A man was standing on a truck bed, loading goods. As he stood up, his head came into contact with an overhead power line. He was immediately electrocuted and fell down. This incident highlights the extreme danger of working near overhead power lines. Always be aware of your surroundings. Maintain a safe clearance from all power lines and treat them as live and dangerous. In a factory, a worker on scaffolding tried to avoid a raised beam, but it snagged on the structure, dragging him down. He tumbled with the beam, narrowly avoiding being crushed. Dust flew as he hit the floor, shaken but alive. Always secure moving equipment and maintain. A construction worker climbed the scaffold without any gear. Nearby, a team hoisted a heavy iron bar. Suddenly, the bar swung wide and struck the scaffold. Metal clanged, the structure shook, and he plunged to the ground. Always secure your safety. One careless step can cost a life. A worker sat on a milling machine to reach over to the other side to adjust a control panel. The machine unexpectedly started, pulling the worker into the mechanism. A co-worker saw this and ran to shut off the main circuit breaker to stop the machine. Never sit, step, or climb on machinery, even when it appears to be off. Always follow proper lock-out, tag-out procedures before performing any adjustments.